This will be short and quick. I'm short, she's quick. Okay. This is Debbie's fourth speech in the Advanced Storytelling Manual. Storytelling is centuries old, has many purposes. Storytellers want to entertain their audiences. They want them to feel the emotions of the story. They want their audiences to become involved with their characters. Debbie will be entertaining you, but also she'll be enabling you to experience her story through her characters and their emotions. This speech number 4 is 6 to 8 minutes long. The objective is to arouse our emotions while telling the story. Here's Debbie, trip down memory lane.
I'm going to take a cue for this speech from Monica. She's talked so eloquently about her personal life. So I want to share a very poignant moment with you, which is the death of my dad. In 1992, when my dad was 70, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Now, prostate cancer is not normally a killer because it's so slow growing that most men, die of something else. So we didn't worry about it too much. Let me describe my dad to you. My dad is a people person. He was a people person. He was interested in a variety of things. He had interest in origami, he had interest in gems and minerals. He especially had an interest in science and math. Plus, he was a professor of electrical engineering. So he was a very roundabout person. But my dad, most of all, was a people person. He loved people. And he loved children. And he loved girls especially. Lucky for him, he had 3 girls. And we were the apples of his eye, and he bragged about us all the time to everybody, sometimes to our embarrassment. He had 6 grandchildren, 5 of which were boys. One, the oldest, my daughter, was his only granddaughter. And even though he loved all his grandboys, he had a special little place in his heart for his granddaughter. Let me take you back in time to when my children were in nursery school. Their teacher was getting married, and she invited the entire class and the families to the wedding. And my parents were there also. So during the reception, I looked around, it was outside, I looked around, and there in a grassy area was my dad, sitting on a little tiny chair, surrounded by 30 little preschoolers who were sitting there rapt, listening to his every word. My dad was telling them stories about Schnuffelpfeffer, a little gnome that his father had told him stories about. And those little children just followed every word that he said. And I still have Schnuffelpfeffer to this day. The other thing I wanted to share with you about my dad, they would go out to restaurants, my mom and dad, and they would dine alone. But when they went out to restaurants, my mom always brought a book with her. Strange. Why would you bring a book and read while your husband's sitting at the table? Well, the problem was my dad wasn't sitting at the table. As soon as he ordered, they sat down, he ordered, he's popping up. And what do you think he's doing?
Talking to people.
He's going from table to table to table, talking to every table that had children. Now, I mentioned origami before. My dad used to keep a bunch of folded origami birds in his pocket. And when he would go to the tables, he would pull out the origami bird, he would unfold it, and he would give one to every single child. And they loved it. And my mother sat there and she ate her dinner and she read a book. I'm not sure my dad ever ate. Anyway, fast forward to 2002, October. I get a phone call from my mom that my dad was in the hospital. The night before, apparently, he'd had excruciating pain in his back. Now, my dad doesn't feel pain very much. He had a high tolerance. It was so bad, he couldn't move. So my mother called 911, and they took him to the hospital. Well, there he was diagnosed with bone cancer. Really wasn't bone cancer, though, guys. Just be aware. It was prostate cancer that had metastasized to the bones. It was far gone. He was given 6 to 9 months to live. But my dad had another plan. I feel that he did not want to put his family through the misery of a slow, long, agonizing death. So he made up his mind that it was going to be faster. That was in October. Fast forward to December of '02, Christmas vacation. My husband and I went to Sedona for a week on a little trip. Christmas Eve, I get a call from my sister. You better come home. Dad's really bad. So Christmas Day, we packed up, raced home, and I spent the next 3 days and 3 nights at my mom's house with my dad. I took the night shift so that my mom could sleep, and I gave him his morphine, and I rubbed his hands, and I rubbed his feet, you know, and tried to make him comfortable. My son and his wife, in the meantime, were in Utah picking up a dog that they had bought. So I called them. They flew home as fast as they could. They got there on Saturday, December 28th, which happened to be my daughter's 30th birthday. That morning, my father was in a coma, and we hoped that he knew they were there. That my son and his wife brought their little puppy, and they put it on the bed and let it run around, hoping that my dad would know that they were there. At 1:15 on December 28th, my daughter's 30th birthday, my dad passed away. He took his last breath, and he left this earth. 1:15 was within a couple of minutes of the time 30 years ago that my daughter drew her first breath. I think my dad planned it because it was his granddaughter. And I swear he planned it that way. Anyway, all the arrangements were made. We called the mortuary. The guys came out to take my dad. And it was very moving. My husband and the 5 grandsons wrapped my dad in a shroud and carried him to the gurney. And then the man came over to my mother, shook her hand, and said, "I'm so sorry." But my mother wouldn't let go of the hand. And so the guys were standing there. And my mother says, "Would you like to hear my husband's favorite joke?" Well, they had to say yes. They didn't know what to do. So my mother said, 3 men died and they went to heaven. God said to the first man, "What would you like to be remembered for?" "I want to be remembered as a family man." God said to the second man, "What would you like to be remembered for?" And the man said, "I want to be remembered as a humanitarian." God said to the third man, "What would you like to be remembered for?" And he thought for a second and he said, "I want everybody to walk by my casket. And as they do, I want someone to say, 'Look, he moved.'" And the 2 mortuary guys, they didn't know what to do, whether to laugh or whatever. But my mother finally let go of their hands. And as they're taking my dad out to the truck, the first man turns to my mom and says, "While we're driving, if your husband moves, we'll bring him right back." And the second man said, "Yes, we'll even let him drive." And in unison, my family said, "No, don't let him drive." And that's how my dad began his journey away from earth and into heaven. Thank you.